Hi, this is Tim Evans. Welcome to another installment of TX Coffee News TV. Today I have Antoinette Bone, an elder law attorney, and she's going to speak to us about long-term care planning. How are you, Antoinette?
Hi, Tim. I'm fine. How are you today?
Doing great. So tell me, why is long-term care planning so important for seniors in the HEB and Bedford area?
Tim, it's important because primarily of cost. Once people retire, after they've saved up their entire life to retire in comfort, if they have a long-term care event or a long-term disability period, it can be very expensive to provide care for that person. Now, when I talk to people about estate planning, I tell them that it's not just about planning for what's going to happen to your things at the time of your death. It is as much about planning for a disability period as it is about planning for what happens to your things. And that's important because statistics show that 1 in 2 of us is likely to require some form of long-term care prior to our death. And the reality is that most of us aren't going to leave our homes and get into a fatal car crash immediately. We are likely to live for decades. And even if we do get into a car crash and we survive, we may end up in a situation where we now require assistance. And this can be long before you ever really need to go into a nursing facility. But during that entire time, you're spending money for your care. So if you don't have a plan for care, then you can end up costing your spouse and your children a significant amount of loss of wealth in your family. What I want people to think about are a few things to start off with. How would you feel if you had a stroke and your spouse became impoverished because of the cost of your care? Or your spouse's health started to decline because of the stress related to providing for your care. And the reality is that spouses who are caregivers tend to suffer a decline and incidences of new illnesses because of the responsibility of providing health care to an unwell spouse. This has a significant impact because now we have one spouse who is needing to be in a facility. We may end up with having both spouses needing to be in a facility. Or it simply may lead to premature death for the well spouse. This is what people think. They think that it's not going to happen to me. Procrastination is probably the most common reason that most people do not have an estate plan in place. And most people tend to think that long-term care issues are specific to the elderly, but that's not really the case. A disability period could happen to anyone. Nationally, 40% of people who are currently receiving long-term care are adults between the ages of 18 and 64. So it's not just for the 65 and older crowd. Many people think that only the elderly need long-term care, but again, it's not something that is specific to that population. However, since we have 10,000 people turning 65 and older, and that's going to last for approximately 10 years or so, the elderly are the people who need to start thinking about how are they going to afford a long-term care event.
So Antoinette, tell me, how do they, how would you pay for that?
The payment options are: one, if you don't have a plan in place, you have by default selected that you are going to private pay, meaning that all of the money that you have saved up over your lifetime, like in the form of an IRA or 401k or maybe just in CDs, investments, you're probably going to have to deplete most of those funds in order to pay for your care. You can purchase long-term care insurance, and this is part of a plan to offset the cost, but this can't be the only solution. The thing about long-term care insurance is that you should start thinking about buying that as early as your 40s. Certainly, as with any type of insurance, the longer you wait and the older you get, the more likely you are to be deemed uninsurable. And of course, the more expensive the insurance is going to be, the longer you wait to get it. Another option is to put in place a legal plan and some estate planning strategies in order to protect your assets. And these are strategies that are absolutely legal, and they're really just a form of asset protection planning. And of course, what we want to do ideally is to combine all of these different strategies. Another one of which is to simply depend on public benefits. Combining all of these different payment options is really the best strategy for most people. And the thing about long-term care planning is that it's something that should be done ahead of time. You really do have to plan for this. Ideally, you'll start planning for this 5 years before you anticipate needing government benefits. And we have that 5-year period because Medicaid has a 5-year look back. So any gifting that you've engaged in the 5 years prior to trying to qualify for Medicaid, they're going to look at that and they're going to penalize you for that. They're going to penalize you months of eligibility for Medicaid. Most people also have they think that Medicare is going to pay for their long-term care, but Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Only Medicaid will pay for the long-term care that most people are needing, when they have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia and needing to go into a facility to provide care because it can't be provided at home anymore.
Well, Antoinette, thank you so much for sharing how to do long-term, or the importance of long-term care planning. Sounds like it's a process that someone should have a trusted advisor for.
Absolutely. Do not try this at home.
Yes. So with that in mind, if one of our readers or online viewers wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Call my office at 817-462-5454 so that we can make an appointment for you to come in and talk about what your situation is. And also, you can go visit my website at info@abonelaw.com and download an ebook that I have on long-term care planning.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Antoinette. I appreciate you taking the time to educate us on long-term care planning in the HEB and Bedford area. So excited to learn more about that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tim.